I can feel your anger. It gives you focus, makes you stronger.
Says, do you think more of Disney issues came from Lucasfilm's push for sequel characters at Galaxy's Edge? Wow, Rogue, that's a loaded question, my man. That's not going to get anything controversial in the comments for sure. I love it.
Oh man.
I love it. What do you think, Dre?
Okay, so do you think more of Disney's issues came from Lucasfilm's push? Yeah, so that definitely, I think what happened with Star Wars and how it divided the community definitely set the stage for people not so enamored with Disney's ownership of all these properties, right? Or their influence in the culture in general, right? So that kind of started that whole trend. But oh man, there was an idea, right, for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. The Imagineers originally came up with the idea for Galaxy's Edge to be something that encompassed the stories that had been well known throughout Star Wars community and lore for going on, I think, almost 40 years at that point, right?
Right.
And it featured the Ewok Village, Hoth, some of these more iconic settings. And the idea was, well, we can do that and theme Galaxy's Edge to the past, or we're going to be so incredibly successful with Star Wars IP going forward. Should we more integrate Star Wars Galaxy's Edge or more theme it towards what we're going to do in the future? Because Lord knows that people are going to love what we do in the future, right? Yeah. Remember, these talks were happening back in like 2016, 17. Or no, actually even sooner than that. Maybe I think it was like 2013 or something. Like right when they bought Star Wars, they were having these discussions. And so at the time, it was like, well, that maybe makes sense, right? Maybe we should theme Galaxy's Edge more towards the future of Star Wars rather than its past, and do it in a way that can integrate stories as they come out, more so than we might be able to do had we themed it towards Star Wars as we knew it before. And as Rogue Disney points out, a little bit of hubris there, right? I mean, it didn't quite work out that way. And it really is unfortunate that they didn't take maybe a more all-encompassing view. Can we have a little bit of old mixed in with a little bit of new and do it in kind of a neutral way that invited new characters to go on? That might have been the smartest play out of all of them. Unfortunately, we got what we got, and we're still married to the timeline, though. It just doesn't make any sense. Ugh.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's where I'm at with this Rogue Disney. I think it's a little bit look, it's a little bit 2020, like hindsight's 2020, right? Mm-hmm. Like when Disney bought Lucasfilm, it was the prequels that were kind of panned. I love the prequels. I actually rewatched them all recently, like a couple weeks ago, and I love them more now than I ever have. I love the prequel. But let's be honest, like a lot of Star Wars fans didn't like the prequels. So when Disney bought Lucasfilm, there was kind of like this momentum, this push to kind of do the opposite of whatever the prequels did. Oh, we're not going to do CGI. We're going to do all practical effects, and we're going to get away from that, the prequel kind of thing, right? We're going to get back to the root, and all that stuff, right? So at that time, in that slice of that time period that they were at, that was the right thing to do. And I think Disney also at that time was thinking, okay, we're creating the sequel trilogy, and we're gonna, instead of kind of like building a Star Wars land based on characters from the 70s and 80s, let's do it more on the new films, because that's going to be like the younger generation and what they're going to grow up with. And they were kind of being a little bit forward thinking, like that's going to be the new Star Wars, right? without even knowing what the films are going to do in the theaters and all that stuff, or the backlash and all that stuff. They were thinking like, these are the new films. It's better to be kind of like forward thinking. So I understand where Disney was coming from with deciding the sequel trilogy for the timeline for Galaxy's Edge. I understand their initial mindset of like, okay, this is for future generations, not necessarily for people like me who grew up in the 80s loving the original trilogy, more for future generations, right? I get that. But the issue
just to that point, just to add some more flesh on those bones, this is something that's going to be living with us for 50, 100 years. Right.
Right.
So it kind of makes sense. Like, oh, well, maybe we should do something that integrates better with the stories coming out. That will be with us in that time period than just basing it on that. So go ahead though.
No, you're 100%. So I can understand Rogue Disney, like the mentality that Disney had when they were building Galaxy's Edge. But my issue though, and I'm a sequel trilogy fan. I like the movies. There are issues with them for sure, but I enjoyed them. I had fun with them. But here's the thing. They no longer need to kind of like predict what's going to happen. They already know now, right? They already know that Grogu is a massive fucking hit and that he's like the biggest thing since like Elvis, right? They already know that a lot of people don't like the sequel trilogy. They already know all these things. So now that they know what they know, they need to kind of adjust. Like I understand the mentality they had going into it, but now you built the land. Now the sequel trilogy has been released. Now you know all the facts. You have to be willing to adjust based on those facts, and they're not willing to budge. You have to be willing to budge, and they don't want to do that. It would be so good. Batu is a gorgeously themed land. It is really, really, really immersive. You can fit the old school characters, Luke, Han, Leia, in that world. They would fit just fine in that. You can fit for the youngsters, the Filoniverse and Clone Wars and Resistance and all that in there as well. It's a perfect backdrop for that. You could fit the prequel characters in that backdrop. It all works. Now Disney has to go in there and really give all Star Wars fans from all generations what they want. And they're failing to do that, man. They're failing to do that. They are so, like Dre said, they are so fucking married to their goddamn timeline between episode, between The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. And that's exactly what we're going to focus on forever. That they're missing out on all the money they can make if they did a meet and greet, if they did a Grogu meet and greet, if they did some stuff when it came to like the Filoniverse animated shows and things like that. This would be a huge moneymaker for them. You have to look, this is the thing with Disney. You have to adapt. And this is why I actually like Chapek in some regard. He is willing to adapt. You have to adapt. Otherwise, you're dead in the water. You have to. And Lucasfilm is just, they're so close-minded. And it's not Disney Parks that's against them altering the timeline. I am sticking to this. Avengers Campus has no problem throwing everything in. It doesn't matter what it is. They got like 15 different Lokis. They got Moon Knight. They have Captain America, Chris Evans. They got the other Captain. They got Captain America from the Disney Plus show, Falcon. Everything. So obviously Imagineering has no problem with this. It's Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm, get over it. Bring us the original characters, the prequels, the Filoniverse, all of it, and you'll make a lot more money.
Galaxy's Edge, man.
You were the chosen one.
Come on. Like, what is going on? Give us what we want. Give us what we're craving. Give us what we ask for. Like Disney Fan 55 set up there, right there. Give us what we want, Disney. Luke, Darth Vader, Mandalorian, Grogu, I'd add in Han Solo, and Ahsoka, Anakin. Let's get some of this stuff. Like SoCal Imagine set up there, compare it to, Hogwarts and what, Universal did with Harry Potter. Like, people want to see this stuff. They want to see what they associate with Star Wars on kind of a broader level, you know? I mean, there's so many different realms of Star Wars fandom. Why aren't they all represented in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge to the degree that they want them to be? Come on, let's get out of this whole thing where it's like, oh, it's this time period between The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Isn't that great? It's like, no, nobody. It's like the worst point in the timeline. Everybody's dead, right? More people are gonna die. It's terrible, right? There are Imagineers right now who think like Rise of Resistance would have been amazing had it been themed to, Episode 4, and you had been trying to go off the Death Star rather than a Star Destroyer in, Force Awakens or something like that. I mean, look, we're gonna face a time here when investment in the parks is gonna be lower than we've seen it or have been accustomed to it in a very, very long time. And that's just because the realities of the market and what Disney went through and everything like that. What better way to infuse a way of attracting people to Disney without huge capital expenditures as we've experienced than do an overhaul of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge? It makes perfect sense. Wouldn't take all that much money to do it, but you could really make Galaxy's Edge into the land it was always supposed to be. Could you imagine a Mandalorian walking around with a little Grogu on his back? Could you imagine Ahsoka just kind of, going around stalking the place? Or, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker running away from some stormtroopers that are after him? I mean, you could do it. It provides that canvas to do it. And if you're not going to have like the living world that you promised, at least let us see our characters.
100%. And here's the thing too, like Galaxy's Edge is an enormous land. It's like 14, 15 acres. You can even have a situation where you can look, if Disney doesn't want to have just a total mixing of all the eras into like one big soup where,
Sure.
You can respect it. You can have let's say in the Resistance area over by Rise of the Resistance, you can have, let's say the original trilogy characters. You can have like old school Luke, Leia, Han, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then over there by Smuggler's Run, you can have some prequel characters. You can have like Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can swap these characters out, keep them far enough apart from each other so you don't have Darth Vader and Kylo Ren next to each other. You can respect it. You can also make the land kind of like a generic kind of canvas for Star Wars, and then the rides kind of tell the story from different eras. So you have like Rise of Resistance, which is very sequel trilogy. And then you can have like Millennium Falcon, and Millennium Falcon is easily adaptable. You can make that a Han Solo thing. You can make that original trilogy. You can make that Filoni verse, which it kind of is already right now. You can even make that. You can turn that into a bunch of different things, right? It can be many different eras. You can create a new attraction in Galaxy's Edge that's very prequel based, like a pod racing thing or something like that.
That'd be
You
cool.
can create a more very heavily focused original trilogy attraction. Like everything doesn't you can do all these things and still respect the integrity of the land, because really it's not until you get into the attraction that you start to experience this stuff, so you don't really see it from the outside. Let the attraction tell the story and set the era. The whole land though doesn't necessarily need to be set in that era for that to work, in my opinion.
And nobody, honestly, let's be honest here, 98% of guests don't operate on that cerebral level where it's like the whole land tells a story.
Right.
It's not that way at all. And honestly, we've seen them get away from that. Avengers Campus being the most recent example, but look at Cars Land. There are places where Doc existed, right? And there are places where Doc exists. Right? They play around the timeline there, if you notice. And people don't care. People accept that, because when you say Star Wars land, they expect Star Wars things. And when they don't see that represented, that's much more of a jarring juxtaposition than, oh, Kylo Ren's right next to Darth Vader. Telling you folks, people don't operate on that level. So just give them what they want. I think they will. Just do it.
Well, and a perfect analogy to this, and something that Disney has already done, is Fantasyland. Look at Fantasyland. they have this kind of uniform, kind of European little village aesthetic to the land. But the stories, the attractions contained in that land come from different era, different time periods, different centuries even. You have Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Dumbo, all these different things come from different eras, different, not even necessarily Europe and things like that. I mean, all that. So you have the land is sort of like this generic kind of thing. And then once you go into the attractions, it takes you to a different time and place and different story and what have you. And I don't see why Star Wars Land or Batuu or Galaxy's Edge or whatever you want to call it, it can't do that same thing. It just seems that Disney's done it before, And
the majority of guests operate on that level. They operate on a level where the land just provides a canvas for ideas to come out, for the franchise and all realms of it to be explored, right? They operate on the more of the Harry Potter notion than they do, like, we got to have this whole consistent story that you're a part of. Especially if you're not going to have the elements that really make that story come to life, like Galaxy's Edge was intended to have, right? If you don't have those things, just get rid of it, man. Just pivot. Just pivot, and I can assure you that the public will, they'll not only be receptive, but they'll reward you for it as well. I could tell you, even merchandise sales, even sales for food would go up dramatically if people were happier with the experience that they were receiving rather than the kind of cut experience that we have now. So,
bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness.
Come on, Galaxy's Edge. Come on. Got to bring balance to the Force. Let's go here.